Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your Tree Shelf. And today I am just going to start by announcing some nice news after we've had some quite sad times recently. So in the last 16 months, both of our lovely cats passed away through having cancer, and they were both elderly and we'd had them since I was in my 20s, and we've loved them very, very much, and so we've had quite a sad time losing them both. But last week we had some new joy come into our lives, and we have two little rescue cats who are about 6 months old, who we picked up last week, a few days ago. They're very, very shy, and they haven't emerged, apart from when we're in bed, they haven't emerged from behind the sofa yet. But we have a little, I'll put a picture in that you can only just see them under the sofa. We have a little boy who is called Magic, and we have a little girl who is called Molly. And so, yes, that's our happy news, and it's a reason why I haven't filmed for a little while, just because we've been kind of too sad really with losing our last little previous baby. So yeah, so that's some nice news to start off with, and hopefully they'll be very happy with us, fingers crossed, and they'll come out of their shell soon. But today I am filming a video which is a tag created by my friend Aaron from Aaron Read a Book, or Aaron Read a Book, which is basically where he's chosen 10 different YouTube channels, and he's created a question based on their channel name. And what I've done is, for each prompt I've picked a book that I've read that I'd like to recommend, and a book that's on my TBR where possible. There's a couple where I can't predict the answer in advance if I haven't read them. So that's what I'm going to do today. So the first channel is Books and Badillos, and this is about a book featuring or about food. So for the book that I have already read, I'd like to choose a non-fiction essay collection which is called Bread and Wine by Shauna Nequist. This made my top books of the year in 2023, and I absolutely adored it. This is a collection of essays about how food and sharing food with people we love around a table gets us through difficult times and helps us in happy times, creates memories, provides comfort. And so she's writing about different times in her life, the food that she's made or that she's eaten, some of which is food that has taken a lot of time to prepare, some of is like comfort junk food and stuff like that. But she's just talking about basically breaking bread around a table with people she loves and how that shaped her and her relationships, and it's a really beautiful collection. This is a good timing for this prompt because in February my friend Ashley over at the Untrained Librarian does a readathon called Foodie February, where she has some prompts if you wish to do the prompts, but it's basically to read books featuring or about food. So the book which I'd like to read in February, which fits with this, is Kitchens of the Great Midwest by J. Ryan Stradal. And this is a copy, looks like an ex-library copy, which I got from World of Books, I believe. The actual back, the blurb on the back is actually quite good. So I'm just going to tell you, it says, "Who is Eva Thorvald? To her father, a chef, she's a pint-sized recipe taster and the love of his life. To the chili chow-down contestants of Cook County, Illinois, she's a fire-eating demon. To the fashionable foodie goddesses of supper clubs, she's a wanton threat. She's an enigma, a secret ingredient that no one can find out, and one day Eva will surprise everyone." I remember when this came out, and everyone was talking about it in book podcasts, and came out in 2015. So I'm excited to read this one, and I'll be prioritising it for Foodie February. The second channel is Genre Books, which is a book you like in a genre you don't normally read. So I chose crime for this because I don't normally read crime books. But one book that I really liked was Apple Tree Yard by Louise Doughty. And this one I listened to on audio. I can remember the audiobook being really, really good. And it was also made into a BBC, I think it was BBC TV series, which was really good as well. And it's about a woman who's married and she's got two sort of grown-up children who I can't remember if they live at home anymore. And she is an expert in something to do with DNA, I think, and she has to go to give sort of professional or expert opinions for different things, and she's going to the Houses of Parliament to give an expert opinion in like some sort of debate they're having, and she comes across a guy who works there, and there's like fireworks and they end up sleeping together, and she ends up starting this affair which she wasn't ever expecting to do, and the affair basically gets more and more, the guy is basically dragging her into things which are completely out of her comfort zone, and a crime happens, and it's really gripping, really well written from what I can remember, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my recommendation. The book that I have on my TBR is one that I've just started. I swear I just brought it upstairs, but I've probably left it in another room, so I'll just put up a picture. But it's Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. So this is the first in the Jackson Brodie series, and this is our book club book for work for February. So I bought this book quite a long time ago because I've heard really good things about the Jackson Brodie series, and I really like Kate Atkinson's books. And all I know so far, from what I've read, we're on the third case, so it's giving us a time and a family, and it's walking us through a crime that's happened, and then it stops, and then it goes to the next case. And I think there's 3 cases, and then we meet Jackson Brodie, who is our detective. And from what my friend has said, who really enjoys this series, she said they're like literary crime books basically. So they are crime, you get a lot of backstory about the characters, and it's not just kind of one where it's just written for pace. It's like a more literary book. So I am excited to finish that book, and also to see whether I then want to continue with the rest of the series. Channel number 3 is Bookstalgic, and this is a book that makes you feel nostalgic. So I did a book that I've read, but I didn't feel like I could do a book I haven't read yet, because I'm not sure what would make me feel nostalgic if I haven't read it yet. So for this book prompt, I chose The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Auel. So this is the Earth's Children series, and this is I think 6 book series. I started reading these when I was in about year 6 at school, so that's like age 11, and I love this series. This is set during the Ice Age. It says between 25,000 to 35,000 years ago. I find history absolutely fascinating. I love historical fiction, and the further back in time it goes, the more interested I am. I'm so interested in this. And so we're following Ayla is our protagonist through these books, and in book 1, which is The Clan of the Cave Bear, Ayla is with her people who are the Cro-Magnons, and there's an earthquake, and most of her whole tribe is wiped out by this earthquake, and she takes shelter in a cave, and a lion reaches in and scratches her leg. So she's found like wounded and starving and thirsty, and she's found by a group of Neanderthals who basically take her in and raise her as one of their own. But there's lots of problems because she doesn't speak their language, she doesn't know their cultural traditions and their history. There's people who don't really want her as part of their group for those reasons, and she also looks very different to them. She's a lot taller than them. She has different features to them, and that makes some of them uncomfortable. And so this is book 1 in this phenomenal series, which I am rereading. So I've reread this book, and I want to reread all of them. I can't remember. So they came out over a really long period of time. They started coming out in the 80s. I can't remember whether I've read the very final book or not. So I'm starting from book 1, from book 2 now, because I've read book 1 again. But yeah, so that is my recommendation for nostalgia. The next channel is Book Songs and Other Magic, and this is a book featuring music or magic. So for the book that I've read, I've chosen Open Book by Jessica Simpson, which is a memoir. It was in my favourite books of the year a couple of years ago. It's really, really good. So I was always a fan of Jessica Simpson. Like when I think I discovered her from when she was on Newlyweds on MTV, which was when I was a student at university, and I used to love watching Newlyweds. And I got like, yeah, I bought her CDs, and yeah, I really like her as a person. And so when she had a book that came out, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to read it. And I listened to the audiobook of this, and she narrates it herself, and she just gives us like blows the lid wide open on her life, about how fake Newlyweds was, about all of the horrible stuff that happens to her in the music industry, about the fact that she had addiction to alcohol, which I didn't realise, and about how her life kind of turned around, and she's now got a husband who she's really happy with and 3 children. And yeah, so it's a really, really excellent memoir. So that's the book I've read. And the book that I want to read is a memoir I've had for quite a long time, and I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but doing this and putting these books on my TBRs made me really excited to read them. This is Never Broken by Jewel, and subtitled Songs Are Only Half the Story. So Jewel is a singer-songwriter with kind of country style, who I came across her when she was on Oprah in the 90s, and she'd just gone on this kind of she'd given up like her home and stuff, and she'd gone and lived in this van, and she'd gone traveling, and she was on Oprah talking about it, and I thought she was really intriguing, and I've since come to like her music. I got into her music from that point in time. Her first album was Pieces of You in 1995. She's a really great songwriter. She sounds like she's had a lot of difficult things, because there's a lot of stuff like that in her songs. And Brene Brown has blurbed this, which I didn't notice when I bought it. So that's a really good sign, because I absolutely love Brene Brown. As it says, she reflects on how she survived and how writing songs, poetry and prose have saved her life many times over. I'm really excited to read this, and it's got photos. Oh, it's also got a quote from Neil Young on the back. So very good signs. Neil Young, there's a picture of her with Neil Young and Johnny Cash in this book, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so really excited for this, and it's kind of awakened my enthusiasm all over again. Next is Passage of Time, a book set over a long period of time. So the one that I've read is a 6-star book for me. I absolutely love this book. This is Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese. This is his first book, and he's since done The Covenant of Water, which I've got but I haven't read yet because it's so big. But anyhow, this is wonderful. This is set mainly in Ethiopia in the 1950s, and there's a surgeon, Mr. Stone, who has gone to Ethiopia, and he has had an affair with one of the nurses. She becomes pregnant, and he basically leaves her, and she gives birth. I remember the opening scene is a very traumatic childbirth scene where she has given birth to these 2 twins, Marion and Shiva, 2 boys, and they're born in the 1950s, and it's following Marion and Shiva's lives, their path in medicine. So Abraham Verghese, the author, is a doctor, so he writes the medical stuff like super well and factually well, as well as being an incredible writer. And basically, yeah, we're following them. We're following their found family. We're following one of them becomes a pioneering surgeon in fistula management. So a fistula is where you have a join between 2 things which aren't supposed to be joined, like for instance if like your bladder and your bowel become joined together, and they're women in Ethiopia, because lots of them have really difficult births and there's not the facilities that they need to help them give birth. If they're in a prolonged labour, they can develop fistulas, and then they can have problems with things like incontinence, and then they can be rejected from where they live because they can't control their bladder or bowels. They can become very sick, and so one of the twins in this develops some fistula surgery, which helps to like save lots of lives. And so I found that really interesting as well. But the story is beautiful, the writing is amazing, and it's such a good book. I really need to reread this. It's so good. The next one I bought when I was really excited to read this, and it's 4 generations, 100 years of history, and I haven't read it yet, which is a bit silly, and that is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. I know this is also on Apple TV, I believe, and I didn't want to watch that until I'd read the book. It's got lots of big names blurbing it on the front. It's following a young girl who lives in Korea in 1911, and she finds herself pregnant and finds out that the father of the child is married, and so she ends up agreeing to marry a man who is a travelling priest, I think, a minister, a gentle minister who's passing through on his way to Japan, and she decides to marry him even though she doesn't really know him. And it says, following a man she barely knows in a hostile country where she has no friends, Sunja will be forced to make some difficult choices, and her decisions will echo through the decades. So I love a multi-generational book, I really do, and one that spans a large period of time where we get to spend lots of time with our characters. And so this is very promising, and I've only heard good things about this book. So that is the one I've chosen that's from my TBR. The next channel is my channel. So my channel is Your True Shelf, as you know, because you're watching it. And Aaron asked for a book that we can't believe is a true story. So I've chosen one that I've read. I couldn't really choose one from my TBR because obviously you don't know the answer to that question until you've read the book. But the one that I wanted to choose was Educated by Tara Westover, which is a story that, well, not a story, a memoir, which the whole time I was reading it was thinking, if this wasn't true, I would never believe it, because it's so improbable, a lot of the things that happens. But I'm sure most people who are watching this have read Educated, but it's basically Tara grows up in a very strict Mormon household, and her parents haven't registered their children's birth. They don't go to school. They don't use doctors. They're very suspicious of sort of mainstream life, and there's a lot of abuse that goes on in her household, but also just things like the injuries that happen to some of them, and they don't go and seek any medical attention, even though they're super serious injuries in some places. And Tara just really wants to get an education. She really wants to become educated and to have options in her life. And she decides to put herself through school despite the non-help of her family and not even having a birth certificate. So it's very difficult and challenging to even get to school in the first place. And then she manages to get through high levels of education at some of the most prestigious universities in the world. And it's her story of how she manages to do that. And you really would, if you're watching a film, you'd really think, but could this actually ever happen though? Because she's had to overcome so many barriers and things. But it obviously did, because it's her story, and it's really, really good. It was another one that made my top books of the year in the past, and I'd highly, highly recommend it. The next channel is Jack at Spread Book Joy, and the prompt is to choose a book that makes you joyous and happy. So for the one that I have read, I chose a YA book, which I absolutely adored, which was so joyful, and it is Big Bones by Laura Dockrell. So I came across this book from Lauren of Lauren and the Books, who also loved this book. She loved it so much that I was like, I'm going to have to read this book, and I just adored it. So we are following a girl called Bluebell, who is also known as Big Bones, and at the beginning of the book, she goes for her asthma checkup at the GP surgery, and the asthma nurse says to her that she needs to lose weight. And she's really happy with how she is, and she doesn't really want to do that, and she wants to drop out of school. I think her mum says she can, not school, I think it's probably sixth form college, she wants to do something different. And her mum says, well, you have to do what the nurse said, and you have to write a food diary then. So she writes a food diary, but how she does it is she tells her story through different entries about food. So for example, we've got a chapter called Pomegranate, we've got chocolate spread, waffles, bones, sardines, wings, cold pasta, dog food, nice, stale poppadoms, rose water. So we've got egg fried rice, shepherd's pie. So that's the kind of titles of the chapters, and it's a continuous story. It's not like essays or anything like that. It's her story, and her story of her life, you know, from being a teenager and her choices and a guy she likes and being really accepting and confident in who you are. And she's such a great role model in that, I think, and she's just a joy. Laura Dockrell's just released a new book called I Love You, I Love You, I Love You, I think it's called, which is an adult book, which I'd really like to read because this was just joyful. And if you want, this would also be good for Foodie February. And a happy, lovely book. So that's that one. I've then got, for my TBR book, for one that makes me joyous, is... Cara Bastone is one of my go-to authors if I want to feel super happy. So I've read 3 of her books, I think, so far. I've talked about them before, but they're all free. The ones I've read are all free on Audible. And they are done as like plays. So there's multiple narrators, sound effects, all that kind of thing. And they are so joyful. They're romances, but they're really, really positive romances. So there's no... people who are like, there's no bad relationship vibes, there's no abuse, there's nothing like that. And all of the guys, I think she said, I've heard Cara Bastone said that she always wanted to write male protagonists who are basically in touch with their feelings, able to express themselves, good partners, and those kind of things. They're really positive. And one that I haven't read yet is called Maybe This Time. The premise of that is a girl called June who is... this is the only one with magical realism in, I think, from memory. But she is transported 85 years into the future. And she wants to go back to her normal present. She doesn't want to be 85 years in the future. And she can use her phone. And the only person she can call in her phone book, who's still in the present time, is a colleague that she doesn't really get on with at work. So I'm guessing this is probably going to be like an enemies to lovers. He's 4 weeks before she disappeared, and she is trying to get him to talk to present day her, not future her, to stop her from doing whatever she did that made her go 85 years into the future. So it sounds kind of confusing when I'm explaining it, but the blurb didn't seem confusing, and I just trust Cara Bastone because I've loved all of her books that I've read before. Next channel is Book Chat with Pat, and this is to have a book with great dialogue. The one that I chose is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This did the rounds a few years ago. It was again in my top books of the year. I thought it was so funny and so serious at the same time. So it's about a woman who I don't think we know her name, and she has a mental illness which has been diagnosed. I think it's probably bipolar from memory, and it's never named. So the illness, it always has been diagnosed with, and I think it's like X or a line or something. So it never tells you what the illness is, but it's about how the illness affects her and her family. And I would say the humour is quite similar to Fleabag. So if you like Fleabag, I think you'd really like the humour in Sorrow and Bliss. It's quite sort of dry, and just there's bits of it which are really, really sort of personal and talking about her mental health and stuff. And then she'll talk about some people in her family, particularly her mum and her sister, who have this very sort of dry, sarcastic sense of humour, which is so funny. And I just loved this book. I thought it really made a serious topic into one which wasn't it wasn't undermining the seriousness of the topic, but it also added enough humour that it wasn't a dark topic either. So it was really, really good, and the dialogue was witty and brilliant. The one that you might ask how I can choose them for my TBR to tell you that it has good dialogue when I haven't read it yet, but I trust this author. And I've got Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. So I've read all of Sally Rooney's books apart from this one. I got this one for Christmas because whilst I haven't always been the biggest fan of her work, I feel like I know I'll read all her books. And I've also, apart from Conversations with Friends, I've got them all in hardback, so I wanted to get this one that's out in hardback. It was half price over Christmas, etc, etc. So I just trust her. Her dialogue is always brilliant, and I just trust that the dialogue is going to be excellent in this because it always is. So that's what I've chosen for the one of my TBR. Next channel is my friend Karen over at Roing Reader, and this is to choose a book set in multiple countries or lands. So the one that I have read is one that I want everyone to read because I loved it so much, and that is Love and Colour by Bolly Babalola. This is a collection of short stories. I'm not normally a short stories girl. I normally like a novel rather than a collection of short stories, but this blew me away. So this is stories from all around the world, all continents, countries, and myths, legends, and it basically retells all of them with a modern day twist. And I thought it was phenomenal. It's very sensual, it's excellent writing, very evocative, and I really loved it. I've also read Honey and Spice by Bolly Babalola, which is a romance, a campus novel romance, which was excellent. But I think that Love and Colour was absolutely brilliant. So if you want a collection of retellings set from different countries around the world, go for that one. And then the book from my TBR is one I'm really excited to read. I got this at Daunt Books in London, and this is a non-fiction book. It's quite a chunker. It's called Hi by Erica Fatland. It's translated from Norwegian by Carrie Dixon, and it is a journey. I love the cover of this. A journey across the Himalayas through Pakistan, India, Bhutan, Nepal and China. So it's a travel memoir. Look at the cover, which was what grabbed my attention in the first place. And there's 3 different religions in this. There's Islam, Buddhism and Hinduism. It's a 2,000-kilometre journey. There's shamanic beliefs, countless languages, vastly different cultures, modernity and tradition colliding, and introducing us to people she meets along her journey, in particular the women, which sounds fabulous. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to read this one. Then the last one is to pick a channel and to make up a question. So I've chosen one of my favourite channels, which is And They Were Readers, which is John and Sierra's channel. And the book, because it's like And They Were Readers, the question that I'd like to do is a book that was a formative part of your reading journey. So one book that I want to talk about here, obviously this is one I've read because I can't answer the question for one in future, but I have a book which was a beautiful nature book, and it really got me to love nature writing. Not only that, I think it just really got into my heart in how much nature and myself and all of us are linked together. And it's a hardback book. It's really beautiful. It's called Touching the Wild by Joe Hutto. I came across Joe Hutto because I really want to be able to see this again, but I can't find it anymore on TV. He did a documentary where he raised a group of wild turkeys, and he got them to imprint on him, and so they felt like he was their mother. And he did this incredible documentary about these wild turkeys and what impact they had on his life. And so I really wanted to read more of his work, and it's quite hard to get hold of in the UK. I don't know if it is in other parts of the world. So he's lived in Wyoming with a herd of mule deer for 7 years, and this is his story. And it's got beautiful photography in here as well. Most of the pages have got pictures of the different deer, and really gorgeous pictures. And there's lots of memoir about his times. Like some of the pages are just pure text, but I just feel like he is such a special guy and such a good nature writer, and he really gets to know all of these deer, and he really just is so respectful of nature. And I just feel like that book really touched my heart, and I really want to read more of his work, but like I said, it's just quite hard to get hold of in this country. So yes, that is the book that has been a formative part of my reading experience and life in general. So I'd really love to see other people do this tag, so please let me know if you do this tag. Well, I'll get tagged in it anyway because my channel is in it. So if you do this tag me. And I hope it's been good to see some of the books that I can recommend, lots of which have made my top books of the year in previous years, as well as books I have to read. And like I said, it's really sort of sparked my interest again in these books, because you know what it's like. You have books on the shelf, you sort of scan your eyes past them without really seeing them sometimes. And when you actually pull them from the shelves and talk about them and hold them, it then does make you think, oh yeah, I remember why I bought this, I really want to read it. So yes, that was my list. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these or if you'd like to. And like I said, let me know if you do the tag. I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.